Hey everyone, I'm Jen and I'm here with MC, who is a coach and a professor and a trauma researcher. And hi MC, nice to see you.
Hi, so good to see you.
So, who are you and what do you do? And tell me a little bit about yourself.
Sure, yeah. So I'm a weirdo. I'm MC. I am a professor and a coach, and I specialize in trauma. And I run the healing trauma groups here at Tat Lab.
Okay, so how many lab groups do you lead?
We do right now. We do three. So we meet on Monday nights, Wednesday afternoons, and Friday afternoons, and they each have a different. Right now, they each have a different theme. We're going to change this up probably, but Monday is open forum, so people kind of come with topics and random questions about trauma and how to understand it, define it, all that kind of stuff. Wednesday, we do tool time, so we look at a specific tool to help regulate the nervous system and the brain when you're feeling triggered or upset, which also applies to general stress, of course. And then Friday, we are learning from the greats. So right now we're reading The Body Keeps the Score, which is a huge,
An amazing
huge
book.
book in trauma. Yeah. And then we're going to just keep going with that and keep reading stuff and learning from other people out here there who are making huge strides in how we understand and treat trauma.
Very cool. Okay, so I
Yeah.
want to come back to that. But
Yes.
actually, no, let's talk about that right now. So,
Yeah.
okay, how would you define trauma?
Okay. This is a huge question because I actually, when I got into the study of trauma, it was kind of by accident. And one of the things that kept me hooked was that clinically, there's not actually so there's a definition in the clinical Bible, which is the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders, of what PTSD is. But when it comes to what kinds of things count as traumatic stressors, there's not really agreement about that. And
Well, because
so
anything can be trauma, right?
yeah. So, but the risk with saying that is that we want, like, the word, we don't want to stretch the word to meaninglessness. So we don't want to say that, like, okay, the silly example that I always use is like, oh, they're out of caramel syrup at Starbucks, I'm traumatized. Like, no, that's not the same. It's like,
Yeah.
but we also want to give the person who's experienced the event the empowerment to decide whether it was traumatic for them. And so the definition that I like to use, which I kind of adapted and stole from a clinician named Robert Stolero, is that trauma is unbearable emotional experience that
Okay.
lacks a relational home.
Okay. So wait, say it again.
Unbearable emotional
Emotional
experience
experience.
that lacks a relational home.
Okay. Yeah.
Because then we don't run the risk of, like, anything at all under the sun can be traumatic, and we then stretch that word to meaninglessness, and then it doesn't, then we kind of lose the weight of it, which is important. But also, like, it lets the person decide, yes, this was unbearable to me. And that could be a breakup, a divorce, a job transition, the pandemic, right? Like,
Yeah.
a move across the country, like, whatever it is, could be unbearably emotional, right? Something that you can't fully bear on your own. And in the presence of things like that, and in the presence of everything else in our life, we relate to other people. That's how we process. And so when you have nowhere to put it, no one to relate to you in the way that you need, then this unbearable emotional experience becomes lasting, and it affects your current behavior, your relationships, the way you show up at work, how you feel in your body, all these other things. So it's
Got
a very
it.
long answer, but
No, but that makes so much sense.
yay.
Okay. So since you are also a coach, I'm assuming you do trauma coaching. Like, what does that
Yes.
mean? What does that look like? Like, who comes and sees a trauma coach?
Yeah, so good question. So I've had the amazing opportunity to work with all sorts of different clients and populations, partly because I'm also a researcher. So I've worked with like previously incarcerated gang members, victims of sexual assault, child abuse, people returning home from combat, like all sorts of things that way. And then also people who are going through breakups, people who are doing career transitions, people who are really struggling with grief or loss in their life that may have been, expected, but still heavy.
Mm-hmm.
And so what does that look like when people come to see me? I like to, my goal is always to like meet people where they are and also have always an eye on where they want to be, right? So coaching is not therapy light. It's a different modality, right? So we are more, that's the way I like to think about it. So we're more present to future than present to past. That being said, you can't like draw that line with a Sharpie, right? Like you need sometimes to make visits to the past in order to understand how someone's current behavior or triggers are showing up, and then how they are, where they want to get to. Right. So I kind of meet the person where they are, and then we just kind of go forward and try to get to where they want to be. And so that will look like giving them resources about how to feel better and deal with anxiety and stress in the moment, how to deal with triggers, how to identify their triggers, how to communicate with other people about their trauma in their life as it's coming up, how to increase trust in the world and in themselves and all that kind of stuff. And then also sometimes some processing about what has happened, right? From a coaching perspective, not a therapy one, but you can still process in coaching, right?
Yeah, totally. So how would you know then if you're done working on your trauma?
You're never done.
I mean, okay, I agree, but how
So
does someone else know?
Totally. So I'm not just being like cheeky. So I think that we need a whole societal reframe. I'm writing about this right now on the linearity of grieving and trauma processing, and also just, stuff in general. Healing is not about getting somewhere, right? It's not about arriving at like, here, now I'm healed and I don't have trauma anymore and I can like take that label off. I think it's more about like being in remission, right? Like, so you look at where you want to be, right? So often trauma shows up in really sneaky ways sometimes in the way that we relate to other people. So it could show up in the idea that like you don't have relationships in the way that you want, right? They're not as peaceful or as vulnerable or as conflict free as you want. So what we'd look at in terms of like a concrete goal is to get more ease and comfort and vulnerability in your relationship. And so there's that kind of goal. But the trauma, I think we have to get rid of this idea that like we get over things.
Yeah.
Because forgetting, getting over and also not feeling is never the goal. That's not how memory works. That's not what it means to be human. Like, it's just not, shouldn't be the goal. So the goal is to integrate, right? How can you take this thing that's sticking out into the present and integrate it into your life in a way that honors it rather than tries to like obliterate it? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. And it's making me think, because like I often tell, my clients that it's not about, getting rid of it. It's about like, okay, can this thing still live in your life? Like, can you now have functional conversations about it? Do you have the framework to live a life with this thing? So instead of being the elephant in the room that everyone's pretending they can't see, like, it's just like, no, now it's got to see at the table and everyone knows that they cook peanuts with dinner and everything's awesome. And it's really great.
Right. No, I love the way you said that, because that's exactly like, it's like when you think about triggers, right? We talk about this all the time, like, oh, I'm triggered by conflict or something like that. If you can get to a place where you can say that to somebody, hey, I have trouble staying in the room when we have conflict. Like, here are some things that tend to work. And also when that doesn't work, I'm going to need a little bit of a break. Then it just becomes something that you navigate like everything else, right? We all have stuff and preferences and things that help us navigate the world. So it can become, I love how you said that.
Well, I think so much of it is also like getting it to be frontal lobe, because, so much of trauma gets like hidden. And so
Totally.
I think, and like we don't know why we're triggered at a certain thing all of a sudden, or we don't realize that we've completely switched mental states. And I think just like the bringing that to light is so fucking huge.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely.
So, well, very cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to Tat Lab. So what's your favorite part about being an instructor with Tat Lab?
Oh man, I mean, this has been one of the coolest things I've ever been involved in. I love everything about it, and that sounds like I'm being exaggerating, but it's just true. The group of people is amazing. People come and they're really willing to be open and share and be vulnerable and connect and support each other, which I've never seen anything like that at that level, right? Like, it is really an open, amazing community. So it's really humbling to see people really doing work and with each other and supporting each other through the struggle. I think it's really amazing. It like fires me up because people are so interested in the best way. And so it's like, okay, well, now we're going to look at this. Oh, that brings up this issue. Okay, let's look at that next week. Like, it's just this kind of like endless like fascination, which I really like. So the community and just the continuity of it, and also seeing other people's progress. Like, people take the stuff that we talk about really to heart and they apply it in their lives, and they see change. And like that, as you know, working as a coach, like that's the best part, because it's
Oh my
like,
gosh, yeah.
it's humbling. You're just like, damn, like this is, I don't know, it makes me want to cry. Like I love it.
Well, and I see, and I'm assuming that you do too, where there's like this, because obviously members go to multiple classes,
Right.
there'll be like, this concept gets introduced, and then like, you know, 5 of
Mhm.
them or whatever, like, oh, we just covered this on Tuesday in so-and-so's class. And,
Totally.
there was this analogy about this and this and this. And, oh,
Yes.
so-and-so was talking about that book. We're all picking it up now. And then it
Mhm.
shows up like in the Facebook groups where like, 4 of them are now reading this book all of a sudden and sharing
Yeah.
notes. And it's
Right.
really cool.
Yeah. And I love that too, because there's no, I mean, that's, as you know, like that's really rare, right? Like to
Oh,
be able to, we're not doing that on purpose. We're just all aligned because we're similarly, I guess, I don't know, we have similar value sets or personalities or whatever it is, but it's not on purpose. I love the overlap, and I'm sure you experience this too. I learn from other instructors, from the
oh yeah.
students. Like it's not like a hierarchy, you know?
No, it was really great. I was trying to explain boundaries, and in an answer to a question I'd been asked, and I was kind of like stumbling, and those moments that your words just don't
Oh,
work
yeah,
very well. And
every
one
day.
of the yeah, right. And one of the group members was like, "Oh, I've got this great explanation. I don't even remember who it was from." And they like came in and they like verbatim vomited out with some other instructor. And it was like, yes, that was exactly
Yeah,
it. And it was
totally. And then you're like, hold
beautiful,
on, let me write that down.
right?
Yeah,
Because it was so good.
totally.
And it
That's
was
and
such a
that's the other
beautiful
thing that
moment.
totally. I think that's the other thing that keeps the like fire going, is that it's this like everyone is throwing, stuff into the fire to keep it alive, which is
Yeah,
awesome.
it is. It's really great. Okay, so what do you wish more people knew about themselves, about their journey, about their healing? Like if you could, like,
Yeah.
one bumper sticker for the world.
Man, this is funny. Like, I'm sure you've had this experience too as a coach. Like, I so often wish that people could see themselves like
Mhm.
as they actually are, even for like 30 seconds, because we don't see ourselves and we're so critical and we're so focused on what we lack and what our, what things we want to work on in a negative way. So I think I wish people could see themselves. I think about that. I find that it's almost heartbreaking,
Yeah.
um, that people can't. So I think one of the things I wish that people thought more and kind of were more aware of their internal monologue. This is coming up a lot lately, like just how mean we are to ourselves
Mhm.
and how much damage that does and how much that gets in our way. I think that's certainly common if you have trauma in your past, but I think it's also common just as humans, right?
Mhm.
And I also think like I wish people could see and really imprint, I talk about this all the time, their progress. Because I think
Yeah.
like, again, you hit a roadblock and then you go over it, and then you hit another roadblock and then you focus on that roadblock, and you don't see that you just conquered a whole bunch of things. You know what
Right.
I mean?
There's like a mountain behind you,
Yeah,
and all you could see is that there's like this rock standing in front of you, and you're like, damn it.
exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And then you're like, why is there another rock? What's wrong with me? And we internalize, and it's like, no, no, no.
Yeah.
Like, that's life. Like, life. I have a friend who always says life has a demand quality, which makes me laugh. And I'm like, yeah, it sure does. But you're like, you just climb that mountain. Like, you're a badass. You can
Mhm.
totally climb this one. You have the tools.
Yeah. And I do think that is something that we as humans forget, is that like, yes, this is like a big mountain maybe in front of us, but like now all of a sudden, because of all the work we've done, it's not that the mountains go away, it's that we have,
Exactly.
like literally the tool belt filled with, there's carabiners and ropes and climbing
Yeah,
buddies and a Sherpa and like all the things that we've like figured out along the way.
totally. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Cool. I
I'm
like
obsessed with
that.
that, the toolbox idea, because it's like
Mhm.
you can't ever arrive at a place where you are impervious to life and its
No.
challenges and struggles, but you can have a really refined set of tools that you can pull out, and that you can then trust yourself to, that you will be able to get
Yeah.
through. Yeah.
I like that. I'll have to remember that one.
Yay.
All right. Do you have books, movies, TV shows, things that you would throw out there to the world that make that like speak to the work you do or that are really good reads for people?
For sure. The books, so The Body Keeps the Score, we're reading that right now in on the Friday groups. It's really, Bessel van der Kolk is just a huge figure in trauma, and he's also really humble, which is amazing. And the book is written for people who are not in the healing field, right? And so, but it doesn't dumb things down. So you get a lot of neuroscience, you get a lot of like understanding about what the trauma response looks like in the body, and how to work with it. And so that's a really good place to start.
Yeah, I like that one.
Yeah. Trauma and Recovery is another one that's really great, by Judith Herman.
Mm-hmm.
That was from the 90s. But it's, she gives a really good like historical understanding of trauma, and also talks a lot about how to rethink like captivity as someone who's dealing with like something like domestic violence or an emotionally abusive relationship, that I think is really normalizing and amazing and helpful. And then, there was a third one. The one that I just read recently that I loved, that I want to read again, is Maybe You Should Talk to Somebody by Lori Gottlieb.
Oh, I haven't read that one.
Oh, it's amazing. She's a clinician, and she writes about her clients and their client stories, but also they're kind of threaded between her own story. And so you get this idea that like the therapist sees a therapist, and like that we're all on the same, path that way, which is one of the things that brought me to working with John a long time ago, was that he was like, look, like we all have stuff. Like we come to this field, this isn't a hierarchical power structure thing. Like this is, we're working on this stuff all together. So those are books.
I like that. Those are good suggestions.
Thank you. Yeah, that one's you should definitely check that one out. It's good.
No, I'm going to.
Movies, Inside Out is great when it comes to memory in the brain. They did a really good job with that, and just emotion in general. What else? Honey Boy. I don't know if you've seen that one.
No, I haven't seen that one. Okay.
Oh, man,
I've heard of it, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's heavy, but it's
Okay.
he actually wrote it about his own life and his traumatic past. He wrote it, I think, while he was in an inpatient program as part of his healing, like a narrative. So that's amazing. What other movies? There's so many. Heal on Netflix is really good.
Yeah, that one's on my watch list for this winter when we're all snowed in or something.
Yeah, it's great. There are a lot about like alternative therapies, and also just the intense effect that stress has on the body. TV shows, I just watch garbage to unplug. So
super legit. I think that is a very valid coping strategy sometimes.
Sure. We need to be able to do. That's another thing I wish people, sorry to go back, that I wish people knew, is that like distraction and unplugging are tools. You can use them, and any tool can be used as a weapon, right? So like if you're unplugging, if you're binging Netflix for like 7 days straight and not showering, that's like maybe something to look at. But unplugging and listening to stuff that gets you distracted is healthy for your brain, which is then healthy for your body, and it's important.
No, that's again one of those conversations that like I find myself having as sort of on repeat. Is like, no, just because like you once read an article in Self magazine or whatever that said that this thing is bad does not mean actually we should like dump it out. Like there is a very real time we're intentionally finding like, okay, these are my 7 most solid like distracting coping strategies, like whatever, like which one is most appropriate right now, and like. Yeah. Sometimes that is like a seriously solid night of Netflix and chill, and like
totally.
Yeah, like turn off the phones and just let it be.
Yep, and stop looking at the news. I just started watching the British Baking Show, the Great British Baking.
I've heard that's so amazing.
Oh my God. It's like you just enter into this world where everything is lovely, and there's like cookies, and it's just like, why not?
That is really great. My daughter's got me watching Cesar Millan, the Dog Whisperer.
Oh.
Which is so not my normal thing at all, but I'm like, she's got me so hooked, and I'm like, yeah, let's just sit at night and like we're gonna watch some dogs, and they're gonna be like a little problematic, and then by the end of it, like everyone's happy and they're getting treats and they're going on walks, and it's beautiful.
Problems are solved. I love that.
Yeah, it's so fun. All right. So what else um, would you want people to know about what you do and who you are and about themselves?
Oh, that's tough.
It's like
Number
a big
one,
essay
come
question.
come and hang out at Tat Lab. It's great.
Hmm.
Be open and kind with yourself. It's okay. Also, I think one of the biggest things is shame is a giant barrier to healing and to being present. And so, and also everything that we do, almost everything that we do is like adaptive, and our brains are trying to cope. And so I think one of the first things you need to do, and I wish we could just like blast this like on a loudspeaker, is like, could you forgive yourself for what you did to survive, right? Because we shame ourselves so much for the first adaptive resources we reach for are not always healthy.
Hmm.
And I think the takeaway there is that you were trying to adapt and survive. And
Yeah.
that's healthy, even if the modality wasn't healthy. And I think in order to pick up healthy coping mechanisms, you need to put down the old ones, which also means putting down the shame that those were the ones that you picked up.
Yeah. I
So
love
yeah,
that.
yeah. So if that was alcohol, or that was, some kind of reckless behavior in your life, like, okay,
Yeah.
maybe we want to stop that, but also you were just trying to get through, and that's okay.
Right. Well, and that is the thing that got you to the point where now you can
1,000%.
evolve and like do the next thing and grow
Yeah.
past it. Because if it wasn't for that thing that got you band-aided over those
Yeah.
horrible moments, you wouldn't be having the conversations that you are now. And I think that is in the realm of shame, like the thing we so often forget.
Yep, 1,000%, 1,000%. And then we get stuck on it, right? And then you get stuck
Yeah.
with shame, and then you're much more likely to continue using those unhealthy tools than to pick up better ones.
Yeah. You should
Yeah.
give people like superhero capes. So like instead of saying like this is my
Yeah.
like horrible coping strategy, it's like, no, like I like went through this trauma and then like here's
Yeah.
all of the ways I figured out to get to today. And like and I kept like doing it and I kept showing up and like
Yeah.
look at all my like remember on Girl Scouts or I don't know, whatever you
Yeah.
did Boy Scouts, like there's like the badges.
Yeah.
I feel like grown-ups need badges.
We do. And that goes back so much to like, we are hardwired to imprint the negative. We have
Yeah.
to manually imprint the positive. So like
Mhm.
imprint the wins, imprint the celebration, like, or, celebrate the successes, build on success.
Yeah.
Don't miss that stuff.
And that success is sometimes getting rid of like the coping strategy that like isn't working anymore, but
Right.
worked really well for a while.
Right. 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 Totally.
Yeah, I love that.
Another movie about that, Lars and the Real Girl, which is kind of a bizarre movie. It's
Okay.
nothing crazy happens, but a sex doll is one of the main characters. But it's nothing like graphic or anything like that. But it's about this exact thing. Like sometimes grabbing what we need to adapt can seem strange to other people, but it's the thing that gets us to the next phase. And so it's an important step.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yay. Well, thank you for
Yay.
talking to me today, MC.
Thank you. This was so fun.
This was fun. And we will talk more later.
Okay, sounds good.
Bye.